And now, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to our speakers. We have Daniel Gannon, Turnkey's President and CEO. Dan will be sharing with us today some insights on mobile app development, as well as specific challenges and key trends that are taking place in the market. Brad Calloway, Director of Global Pre-Sales at Turnkey, will be joining us as well. During his part of the presentation, he will be covering more about scriptless test automation and how it is being used to validate enterprise applications from the desktop to mobile. And last, but certainly not least, we have Dan McFall. Dan is VP of Sales of Mobility Solutions at Mobile Labs, and he will be speaking to us today about the benefits of secure, cloud-based testing across your mobile devices. So, without further delay, I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Gannon to get started. Dan?
Thank you, Stacy. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. I'll talk a little bit about some of the trends in the industry and as they relate to mobile and some of the acceleration in that direction, and frame the conversation that Dan and Brad will have. So first, just a little bit about Turnkey Solutions. We were founded in 1992. We've been an HP and Mercury technology partner since 1995, and we've had a partnership with Mobile Labs, most importantly, for several years now, as we have worked together with them to streamline and deliver what we think are very innovative solutions to tackle the growing problem of how do you manage mobile applications. We are a privately held company based here in Denver, Colorado. We've got a group of offshore specialists in India, and our customers are all around the globe. We've built our solutions exclusively on the HP ALM platform. So some of the things that Brad will talk about in relationship to how we work together with Mobile Labs, we'll talk and illustrate how that technology all comes together. And our core platform is all about scriptless testing. How do we eliminate the manual effort required to build intelligent script automation for hundreds of application types, and including mobile? And this, I think, is really important when you think about mobile applications, because the scale, the pace of the change requires this level of intelligent automation that takes the manual effort out of the process and enables sort of what we call shift left, test earlier in the process, and become more agile in terms of how things operate. So Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So Mobile Labs has been in business since 2011, and we're based here, I'm speaking to you from Atlanta, Georgia. We are also a global organization, primarily based here in Atlanta for the U.S. We have recently opened an office in the UK and have a second largest office really based out of Noida, India, where several of our technical service representatives are based to support our international customers. We're really focused on two different solutions within that same HP ecosystem. The one I'll focus the most on today and the problems that it solves is what we call Device Connect. That is our private strategic mobile device cloud that's going to really enable you to bring devices under management as part of your development and testing processes. And I'll spend some more time in a minute talking about how that's going to help with that shift left concept and agile concept that Mr. Gannon just mentioned. The second component specific to HP, the biggest thing that really allows C-Factory to work all of its magic for you in a mobile environment is our Trust solution. It's an extension of HP's Quick Test Professional or Unified Functional Testing platform that allows it to see and interact with real mobile applications on real devices. Brad's going to really talk about the concepts of automation today, because I think you'll see as we get into the challenges of mobility, you'll understand why you have to automate, but also why you really need to be able to do it in a scriptless fashion. So those two solutions together are going to be really part of what Brad's going to bring to you today. And what we're all about is we just view this as a very chaotic environment. I'll get into some specifics about that after Dan sets the stage here for the challenges of mobile, but we want to bring order to that chaos for you. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. So let's talk a little bit about that chaos. When you look at this historically, I mean, in the old environments, and this still remains true today, companies and virtually every business sector still have these backbone applications, core applications that they run their businesses on. It may be third-party applications like SAP or Oracle EBS, or could be bespoke applications, custom applications that have been developed. But most companies have some number of hundreds of core applications that they still use to run their business. And most of these are sort of expressed in web interface. People access them from desktops and so forth. What's rapidly changing, however, is that there's a requirement to extend those out into the mobile environment and give customers, consumers, and other business users access to those applications in a completely different form factor. And in fact, and it's interesting because I don't know that I've ever seen a statistic like this from an analyst firm before, but IDC report published last year says by 2017, 100% of the line of business apps that are in customer-facing sort of roles and up to 75% of apps that are internally facing will be built for mobile-first consumption. It's a huge sea change in terms of the way that applications are being developed and extended out. And of course, the expectation from the users are that there's not only no loss in terms of functionality and quality, but rather an increase. In other words, the experience that people have using those applications in their mobile environment should be as seamless and qualitative as anything they experience from a desktop perspective. So there's a significant change. And the other thing that I think is important that Brad will touch on a little bit is that these aren't just mobile-based applications, but rather they have to be seamlessly integrated into these back-end systems and have to work functionally completely in sync with your back-end applications. So there's pretty complex and significant set of requirements there that have to be considered when you push these applications out beyond their sort of normal core environment. So if you look ahead, again, going back to various analysts, you're going to see more mobile apps across the business. Again, as you approach that 100%, you're going to find a lot of innovative ways for people to build mobile applications around their offerings and touch consumers, users, etc. You're going to see a much faster release cadence, and this is where the issue of how do you access those environments, where Device Connect comes in, and how do you test them out fully so that the experience of the users meets their expectations. Brad will talk quite a bit about that. And of course, we see an explosion in terms of the type of devices, OSs, and the development components that make up those applications. And so if you look at the chart on the left, this comes from GigaOM research published earlier this year. You still see a fairly balanced view in terms of native iOS, native Android. Still HTML, of course, has to be considered. There's still people that are working from desktops. And then there's a hybrid sort of technology approach where people are merging HTML in with mobile applications. So a lot of change, but the demand for faster support for these applications, more rapid cycles, and agile, essentially, approach, and the need for quality doesn't diminish, it actually increases. So in terms of mobile app management and focus on app maturity, there's this balance between complexity and the strategy that you go forward with. And, in order to minimize that complexity as you implement and manage mobile solutions, very, very critical, there's an imperative to increase the level of maturity in your mobile strategy. And, of course, better alignment of people, processes, and technology as you streamline that process to really be effective and efficient and achieve the demands that the market is looking for. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about one of the sea changes and innovative platforms in this industry, Device Connect.
Thank you, Dan. An excellent kind of lead-in to this. So what we want to talk about here as we look at those challenges is what we have really experienced with our customers, which is beginning to solve that challenge at its core. And what we view as the core of the infrastructure that's building mobile applications really is trying to answer these pain points that grow out of that sea change that Dan just mentioned relative to devices, development types, application management, et cetera. So, one of the biggest things that we have in mobile right now comes to the devices themselves, and this generates a lot of pain points, and that's what I'm going to focus on. We believe a lot in automation, but I'm really going to let Brad kind of carry that forward as we segue into this. But the beginning point really comes with getting your hands on devices. And that first pain comes with the fact that you're ending up, as you share a common device pool, as you sit there and have physical devices, as you look at some of the accounts we dealt with where they're sitting in shoe boxes, or they've got a desk drawer, maybe a file folder system that tells you to manage the device, the OS version, all of those things on it. Your people, your very productive, expensive quality assurance engineers, developers, et cetera, are waiting on those devices, and that starts to breed inefficiency. And then what carries from that is to try to avoid that inefficiency, you start buying a larger variety of devices. So you start looking at getting a device for everyone. And it can be a very surprising capital outlay in even a smaller organization to get all the devices that they need for all the different people who have to have their hands on them as mobile development initiatives and application initiatives start to go up. On top of that, and this is where the automation piece of this really begins to come to play, is that because of all of these different platforms, there is a pretty multiplicative growth in test cases. If you look at not just, say browser-based testing where it's a web page and you might have a couple different browsers across a couple of different versions of Windows. In mobile now, you might have that application and you have to look at it at a couple of different device form factors against a couple of different operating system versions. So instead of a test case you might run 9 or 12 times, you could look at having to run that test case 56, 60 times. You're not going to be able to keep up with that without automation. And that inefficiency, that ability to cover all those test cases, you are most likely to meet the demands of the business, to meet the demands of your customers. You're going to start releasing applications sooner than you would like, and now you have issues with quality, there's brand impact, there's potential revenue impact, etc. And one of the things I'll touch on a little bit as we talk about agility is the other challenge in mobile is really about, as we look at being more agile, as we look at what we've been able to do with traditional server applications, web applications, desktop applications, and the things that we've been able to achieve with virtualization, remote access, cloud-based technologies that allow DevOps to really take hold in our ecosystem. Well, there's a challenge with that relative to mobile, and that is we don't virtualize devices. We're going to have real devices that we need. We can't multiply that up in the Amazon cloud and make one iPhone 6, 20 virtual iPhone 6s or a Samsung Galaxy S5. We need that real device, and now that it's sitting on a desk, we don't have the tools to bring those under management, and now we miss out on all those DevOps efficiencies. And you had expectations around the project associated with that. So these are the pains, and what it really stems from is device access. We've got to get this off the table to then solve the next 6 challenges that we have behind it. And the challenges behind it are big, but you can't really look at them until you start to say, how do I address this device access problem? If you look at some of the big folks out there, like Infosys, who's of course been doing a lot of mobile testing, they realize app quality is directly related to the number of devices that you test against. But it's an overwhelming challenge. There's globally 97 different manufacturers. That leads to hundreds of different types of Android devices. Even Apple, which is single manufactured, is now up to 28 viable devices across 5 different viable versions of iOS. If you go into Android, I think the stat grows every single day. It's thousands and thousands of permutations. Now, for most of our customers, if you're looking in the enterprise, you're going to find there's an 80-20 rule here. 80% of your customers are probably going to be represented on the 20% most popular devices. Delta Airlines is here in Atlanta, and I believe they found that Apple accounts for almost 50% of all of their use cases, and then the remainder of that is split amongst the top 3 selling Android devices. So it's not so crazy that you have to get everything, but you do need a wide variety of devices, and then as you look at the growing number of testers that you need with the constituency that's starting to come into utilizing all those devices, you can't buy one for everybody. You'll easily spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you do have to have a device cloud. You have to think about bringing those devices under management in a cloud-based environment that's going to give you that range of sufficient device types that's going to allow you to first lower the capital expense associated with buying those devices, but also have fewer idle devices. But more importantly than that, you're going to eliminate the weight. You're going to allow a person who's not sitting there wondering, well, where is this brand new Android device that I need? Oh, it's sitting on Bob's desk. He's actually done with it, but he went back to the rest of the job he was doing, had to put it back in the pool. Now you can manage all of that in a cloud environment. So you're going to be able to come in through the web, see what's going on, be able to schedule those assets like you would any other asset, and now you're going to see that iterative, multiplicative capability to bring them to bear against multiple locations, multiple shifts, and get your resources, your human resources, moving at a much more agile and rapid clip. The other big piece that comes with the ability to virtualize the device is it brings collaboration back to bear. If you've got, like most organizations, developers in a different location than maybe the quality assurance professionals who are in a different location than business analysts representing the line of business that is your customer, getting those people around a single tablet device or phone device or whatever else to look at different versions of the application is very, very difficult. So bringing in a cloud environment that's going to allow you to virtualize that device is going to allow you to bring the power of collaboration back to bear. And now people become a team again. These agile teams come back into being around mobility, which is the environment that seems to demand it the most. So without cloud-based testing, it is not going to be possible to collaborate effectively and get all the coverage you need across all of the different platforms. But the mobile labs perspective is maybe a little bit different than some of the other ones out here. We definitely believe in clouds. There's plenty of organizations doing mobile device clouds. What we view, though, and if we've learned from talking to our customers, is that strategically, from a security perspective, your mobile device cloud needs to be within the 4 walls of your enterprise, being managed by your people and under all of the security controls within your firewall that you've established. And the biggest reason for that is, frankly, the security concerns about data. What makes a mobile device cloud different than, say, Amazon Web Services, the quick spin up an SAP environment or a back-end web service, is that there is still an endpoint. There's a physical, real device sitting on the other end of that virtualization connection. And in that device, data remains resident, whether it is application data like credit card numbers, bank account information, or even just the application itself. If you're first to market with something that's going to be a pretty strategic differentiator for you, I'm thinking like all the things going on in banking and insurance applications right now, that app itself being in a public domain is a pretty big concern, much less the regulatory information around maybe HIPAA-compliant data or personally identifying information, credit information, etc. We just believe that there's really too much of a security risk to send that data outside of your 4 walls and not know if the device was wiped, if it's under management, etc. One of the other things that's actually missing on this slide is to also just talk about the practicality of being able to manage it yourself. The ability to manage the pool of devices on your own with a plug-and-play solution, not have to wait 24, 48, 72 hours for new devices to come online, to be able to take advantage of your own procurement programs with the big manufacturers to get early releases, et cetera, et cetera. There's a very practical reason to bring this within your four walls and manage the cloud yourself. So from a Device Connect standpoint, really what I wanted to show you here was first what it looks like from a deployment model. What you see here is a production unit. Every Device Connect that ships as an appliance, so it is ready to go as it arrives. They are installable in under 45 minutes. That includes getting it out of the box and setting up the monitor and plugging everything in. You can't tell very well in this picture, but it will hold 48 real mobile devices. Licensing works on a concurrency model, so you could have a pool of 48 devices, but maybe you do 8 concurrent, 16, 24, 32, 48. It's going to scale with your business. It's going to scale with your teams. It's quick, it's easy, and you can manage it yourself with very, very little effort. So what that does then is come back and move mobile devices as infrastructure back into the core of your business. And it's going to allow people with either in your local area network who are maybe on the same site as where Device Connect is installed, but also bring back to bear your off-site, offshore resources and allow all of those people to come into the cloud. So once again, reducing device costs, reducing weight, allowing you to maybe use some cost-advantaged resources against those devices. All of the things that cloud enabled you to do in other types of environments now come back to mobile. And then it's going to allow you to get to a broader constituency base. So we've talked a lot, and we're going to focus today on the development aspect, the engineering aspect from a quality assurance standpoint, but also there's the capability to bring support engineers against this, training teams, architects, business analysts, even sales engineers if you're actually developing apps on behalf of your business. All of those types of professionals can get advantage from having this mobile infrastructure core back in your environment. From a deployment standpoint, it's completely private. Nothing has to leave the enterprise boundary. The appliance itself never needs to see the public network. It can all be behind the firewall. The devices themselves are secured within the cabinet, so that is secure, and then you can utilize the system for both manual testing as your app maturity grows, as you bring to bear things like C-Factory to accelerate your automation, or automated testing as well. So completely protected by the firewall, completely behind premise. There is no communication with the devices over Wi-Fi. All of it is handled via the USB port, and it is encrypted. So once again, an extra layer of security as we communicate with the device to give it remote commands and interact with it. It also is going to allow for superior performance. So the screen interaction is near real time as if you had the device in hand. So it allows for a lot more effective manual interaction with the device. It allows for a lot more effective building of those automation cases and run of those automation cases because of the screen performance. So it is real device access. Anything you can do with the device in hand, you're going to be able to do via the virtual interface to the device. So from my client machine, I'll log in, see a device, and then I can interact with gestures, whether I want to swipe, pinch, zoom, scroll, type with the keyboard, exit an app, launch another application. You're going to be able to do all of those things just as if you were sitting there. The best analogy is think of it as a VNC or RDP connection into a real mobile device, but it's over a proprietary communication technology that's much more efficient than running, say, a VNC server on a device and much more secure. So it's going to once again enable your collaboration, and it's going to allow developers and testers to get access to real devices much earlier in the process, and it's going to allow for broader test coverage much earlier in the process. So the domains, we've talked about testing. I'm going to let Brad really talk about automation. It is applicable to the developers, but I think the other key piece to talk about is bringing these assets back under management. So when we think about our pool of mobile devices now, instead of the catch-as-catch-can ad hoc process by which people access those devices, what we've done is they are now an IT asset under management. Our favorite words is IT professionals. We now understand what's going on, we can measure, we can manage, and we have visibility into what people are doing. And that's a key component that Device Connect is going to give to you so that you can really move out of this worrying about devices and back into the things that really matter, which is getting the test coverage you need, quality applications out the door faster. And you can do that by interacting from a DevOps perspective. Now that you have a mobile platform, anything you think about that falls under continuous integration or continuous delivery, you're going to have the ability to do that. So install new versions of applications, run all of the different test cases that you're going to need against that inventory, and you'll make certain that from a deployment standpoint, you have the right application on the right device in the right configuration, completely headlessly, and then you can allow all of your IT systems to accelerate development and release cycles. So kind of in conclusion, before I pass it back to Brad, you'll see here it's at the center of all of the different processes you need. Develop and test, get reporting, manage applications, all of that. This just takes the device problem off the table. But here is the most interesting thing that we have seen with a variety of customers, and why we were so excited when we were able to partner with Turnkey a few years ago, is that once you take that device problem off the table, the demand and the need to run automation presents itself very, very quickly. And that is because of the wide variety of test cases, because you have to validate across multiple platforms that you've never really had to deal with before, between, you know, permutations of Android devices and operating systems, between Android and iOS, between your mobile website and maybe your native application, et cetera, et cetera. And keeping up with all of those test cases, once you've managed the devices, you realize, I can't do this without automation. I'm not going to be able to keep up. So to segue into that, I'm going to pass it back to Brad, who's going to talk to you about how you can really accelerate building those automated cases against the platform and get your quality applications out the door faster.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. So, yeah, as Dan said, I'm going to explain Turnkey's scripted mobile solution. You know, one of the things that Dan said I think is important is that, you know, Device Connect really solves the problem of accessing your mobile devices as well as managing them. But then, as he said, it opens up a whole new set of problems. Is you know, how do I test all these different variations of these devices across multiple different operating systems? And if we look at, you know, kind of how automation has been done in the past and apply that to these mobile applications, I think you'd find out that probably wouldn't work all that well either, especially given the tight time frames that we have to test our mobile applications. Always, you know, have budget concerns, and of course, the quality of these mobile applications is very important, based on the fact that if a mobile application doesn't work for a consumer, they're very unlikely to come back. So Turnkey has partnered with Mobile Labs to provide a scriptless automated solution that's going to allow us to drive down the time it takes to create automation, as well as driving down the cost of ownership or reducing the time it takes to maintain. And you'll see we do this all within a data-driven architecture, so we can define one test case to test all the different variations of a mobile application across multiple devices. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, you know, the Turnkey solution is not only for mobile applications, but actually can test all of your, you know, what Dan talked about, which are your back-end software applications. And we've extended this capability through our partnership with Mobile Labs to mobile applications as well. You know, our solution supports continuous development, so we have very fast release cycles. So given these fast release cycles, we need to be able to build automation, but I think more importantly, we need to be able to maintain the automation that we create. So you're going to see that we're going to be able to create automation objects, and as we go through several different releases of that application, we're going to be able to use that content that we created before, quickly maintain it or bring it up to speed with our mobile applications so that we can reuse it in these very short cycles. The other thing that our solution does, since it is a scriptless solution, we can actually have non-technical users build and maintain automation. So, you know, when we think about DevOps, more people in that process can participate in automation. Our joint solution with Mobile Labs is built on the HP ALM framework. So this provides a consolidated test management solution. So we're going to be able to manage our mobile automation in the same area that we manage our traditional automation, if you will, for our back office processes. So a little bit about our solution. We really focus on 3 different areas. The first one is in the creation of automation.
we really automate this. If we think about mobile applications, it's really just the navigation through these mobile applications. And we have technology that can really inspect your different screens and automatically create automation objects that are reusable across multiple test cases. As I said before, we have a data-driven approach. So I can define a test case at the business process level, and then I can fill out our data scenarios that control how I navigate through those mobile applications. So when we think about this, I'm going to be able to create one test case that represents a business process within an application, and then control the flow of that test to execute the different variations of that business process through a single test case. And I think most importantly, and I've addressed this previously, we can use our technology to identify how the application has changed and automatically update the automation to reflect these changes. We take it a step farther as well, and we're automatically going to update your data scenarios as well. So we're going to keep the data in sync with your actual test cases that we define. So we reduce maintenance both from automation content and from a data perspective. And also, this all resides within HPALM, and we're going to allow you to continue to use 100% of that functionality. Maybe you use that today and you're using it for requirements management, defect management, traceability. You're going to continue to be able to use all that functionality. We do believe with our partnership with Mobile Labs and the fact that we're built on the HP platform that we have the most comprehensive test management solution in the market today, both from what I'll call back office type of applications as well as mobile applications. And we really think this is broken up into 4 different quadrants. The first one is test management, and this would be HPALM. I talked about test creation. We have the ability to automate the creation of your automation content. Test execution. We have a data-driven approach, which is allow you to create fewer test cases and drive the execution through through the data scenarios that you define. And then also change management, this ability to compare your automation against your application and automatically have that automatically update that automation really reduces the cost of ownership, especially given the tight time frames that we have to test our mobile applications. So if we look at the solution or the joint solution between Turnkey and Mobile Labs, as Dan discussed, has Device Connect, which allows us to access our mobile applications across all their different variations. Turnkey uses Device Connect to be able to really touch the mobile devices. And Turnkey has a product called C-Factory, which we'll see in a little bit, which is that the application allows me to automatically create that automation content. And then we use HPALM to store all this content and to be able to build test cases. So I'll first talk about test creation and really look at it from a traditional approach first. We have a product called C-Factory, which really what it does is it's able to look at each of the individual screens in a business process and build what we call automation objects. And these automation objects are small pieces of automation that we can drag and drop in the order that we want to execute them. And we do this directly through HPALM. The nice thing about creating automation objects is I can use them across as many test cases as I want. And really, what it does is it makes the automation solution or the scriptless solution an object-oriented solution. So the concept of reusability of automation is really emphasized by Turnkey. When we take a look at mobile, once again, it's using the same product C-Factory to not only test our back-end software applications, but also do the same thing with mobile applications. And so what we'll see is that C-Factory works exactly the same against mobile applications. Device Connect is going to render the application, and C-Factory is going to be able to inspect the different mobile application screens the same way as we saw previously and build out our automation content library. Once we build this content library, we're able to use these objects to build a test case. Once we build the test case, we store our data, or our data source is actually Excel-based. We fill out that data sheet with multiple data scenarios that we want to test the application with, and now we're able to execute the test case. One of the things that you didn't see in any of this is the need to look at code or write any code whatsoever. And this really allows non-technical users, maybe your QA manual testers, business users, to build and maintain your automation. Next thing I want to explain a little bit more about is our data-driven architecture. And really what I mean by that is, we talked about cFactory and the ability to build these automation objects. And so if we look at the left-hand side of the screen, we're just going to have a different automation object for each one of those different screens. And we're going to assemble those into a test case. Now, I'm not going to create a test case for a specific data scenario, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a test case with the idea that, I may go to any one of these specific application screens. Turnkey has a technology called Data Driver, which is going to allow me to control the way this test executes. I'm going to define multiple data scenarios within my Excel workbook, and when I execute the test, Data Driver is going to actually control the flow of the test. So the first scenario is going to test one variation of this test case, and I can create a second data scenario to test a different flow through the same business process. This is important because, what this is going to do is it's going to drive down the number of test cases you need to define, but still allow you to drive up automation coverage. And it's important that I'm reducing the number of test cases, because when you think about a new release of this application, it's going to require me to go ahead and maintain the test cases that test that application. If I have fewer test cases, obviously it's going to drive down the maintenance cost for it. The second way that we go ahead and drive down maintenance cost is the ability to automatically identify what's different between my application and my automation content. So when we take a look at a single automation object, one of those puzzle pieces that I showed previously, you get an idea here of what cFactory looks like in comparison mode. On the left-hand side is automation content that I created in a previous release, and on the right side is what that content looks like in the application after I've made a change. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but obviously it's color-coded to identify the different types of differences. It may be that an object's name has changed, or maybe that I've added a new field. Maybe I deleted something, or another specific property has changed. cFactory is going to automatically identify those differences and allow you to choose how you want to go ahead and update this automation object. Also, what's not seen here is that we're going to also look at this from a data perspective as well. So if a name has changed, I'm going to update my data sheet based on that name change. If I add an automation object to my test case, that's automatically going to be added to my Excel workbook. So any structural change that I make to any of my automation content, we're actually going to go out and look at all your different test cases and see which data sheets need to be updated. So a real time saver when it comes to having a new release of an application and then getting my automation ready to run. And this is the idea that we can really reduce the time it takes to have automation ready for a new application release. If we take a look at another benefit of this object-oriented framework that Turnkey has, when we think about an application changing, typically with traditional automation tools, I would have to go into each and every test case that touched this application screen and make some type of code change to my automation. With the Turnkey object-oriented approach, what we do is we find that single automation object that represents that screen, and we're going to use cFactory to compare that against the application. Now, what you can see in this pictorial is that this component, or this automation object, was actually used in several test cases. So when I make the update automatically to that component, any test case that uses that object will automatically be updated. Once again, we don't have to go to each and every test case and make an update. We update the automation object one time, and it's automatically reflected in the test cases that use that specific object. So just a recap of Turnkey, what value do we deliver? With the ability to automatically create content, we're going to allow you to create automation much quicker. Our ability to go ahead and maintain automation also is going to allow reduce the time it takes to implement automation and maintain that over several application releases. Our data-driven architecture and the ability to create test cases at the business process level will allow us to drive up automation coverage, which is going to allow us to deliver better quality applications through the ability to test more of the application. And you factor in those two things, and we're going to be a much cheaper solution than going with a script-based solution. Not to mention, we're going to fit into the agile world in which the mobile applications live in. So that is what I had for you today. We're going to open it up now for some questions. I believe there is area for you to go ahead and submit it, and Dan will be fielding those questions, reading them, and then either Dan or I will go ahead and respond.
Hey, Brad. So yeah, we have one here, and it looks like it's pretty much relative to C-Factory. There is maybe a little bit of a mobile apps piece to this as well, but could you reiterate or recover what components and versions of HP software are needed for the full solution?
Yeah, very good question. So obviously I said we use HP ALM framework, so we require HP ALM. We're supported back to version 11 and also obviously support 11.5.2 and 12 as well. We actually use UFT or QTP as our automation engine, so that's actually what runs our test. However, although you need it, our users do not interact with it.
Okay. One, I think, kind of more targeted from my side, and we get this one a lot, and I probably even should have put a slide in to cover this. Why can't I just use a simulator or emulator to do all my mobile application testing? And I can definitely cover off on that. I think one thing, and I don't want to get too technical here, but it's really purely just emulation. Or simulation. I always potentially get that backwards. But one of the challenges is with mobile that a computer can't really simulate a whole lot of the functions that exist on the device. So the easiest one to think of is that, say you're an Apple developer and you're using the Apple simulator that comes, there is not a battery in your laptop. You're also using the processor on your laptop instead of a phone processor, and there's a different architecture there and a different function. There's a different graphics processor, so you might be missing issues relative to rendering on that different type of device than it could exist in a real device. This was actually a real challenge for some people in how they did applications when the larger screened iPhone 6 and 6 Plus came out. If you take that over to the Android world where there's a wider variety of physical device architectures, there's a wider variety of chipsets and firmware and all of those things, there are software level bugs that are mistakes that could be caught by your developers and your test team that you're not catching if you're not running those tests across real devices. Mobile labs would be in a really different business if this wasn't true. It'd be nice for all of us if there was the ability to have a truly virtualized device. But unfortunately, the demands as it's existed now for the last 5 or 6 years relative to mobile necessitates having a pool of real devices, and then as I kind of discussed, those need to be in a cloud so you can get the coverage that you really need. Next question, I'll shoot this one back to you, Brad, and you'll probably understand it maybe a little bit better than I do. Does C-Factory generate test results?
Actually, C-Factory generates automation content, and within that content that it creates, it definitely has error handling as well as reporting capabilities. But the results are actually issued by UFT because it's our execution engine. But the content within those results is driven by C-Factory.
All right. And I think I'll do just kind of one more. Someone asked me about what devices do we need to focus on, and how do we determine that? And that's actually a really great question because, as to go back to what I mentioned, and I actually have a slide we used to put up, and one of the things, and it almost overwhelms people, globally, there's almost 300 million permutations of different devices that you could have between operating system versions, between devices themselves, and actually the fact that the carriers themselves re-image those devices into different ways. So but you don't need to cover all that, and I'll kind of reiterate the 80-20 rule 20% of all of those devices out there in your geographies are most likely going to cover 80% of your user base. And frankly, that 80% of your user base is probably going to cover 95% of all of the test cases that you need to deal with. One of the tools that you can utilize for that, there's actually, it's pretty easy to go out, and if you have a mobile website or you have users that way, you can actually get information. I believe there's open source tools that will give you the ability to go out and determine who's hitting your website, what are the device types and the operating system versions. If they have a fingerprint that they're going to leave, you're going to be able to determine those things. And it's going to determine the application type that you have. If you're building, tablet applications, that's pretty simple. It's a lot smaller pool. If you are doing, mobile banking applications and it's customer facing, obviously you're going to have to cover a wider array of devices. But even then, our banking customers find, the 3 most popular iOS devices across a couple of versions of iOS, probably the 4 most popular Android devices, and whatever supported OS versions of that are going to cover the device pool that you need, and then you're just going to have to look at how much concurrent use do you have. So if you're a team of 20 people, you might be able to use 16 concurrent devices. If you move to the point where you have 100, 200 testers, developers, everything else, you're going to need a much wider variety of devices. That was the last question that actually came in. I'll give a minute if anybody else wants to type another one. And Brad, I was just thinking, just open for you if there's anything you just wanted to reiterate or cover kind of before we wrap this up and let everybody go on with their day.
Yeah, sure, Dan. I guess I would just say is that, we provide a scriptless framework for the testing of mobile applications. And it's, I guess I can't emphasize enough that, we're really going to open up automation to a larger audience, within this development cycle. So, if anybody wants to take a closer look, obviously they can contact Turnkey. You can go out to our website and check out some information there.
Great.
And I think, Dan, just real quick, I think I went to the next slide, and here's the contact information if anybody wants to jot that down.
Yep, perfect. And I'll just reiterate the same thing. Please, a lot of information on our website. I think for the HP shops out there, you really need to look into this joint solution. The power that you get out of all of that test coverage across a wide variety of mobile devices, it's second to none. And it is really going to allow you to achieve the goals that you set out when you started in developing mobile applications for your business. And with that, I'll say thank you for your time.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for participating today. We hope you found the presentation to be helpful, and we'd like to hear from you. So we encourage you to provide us with feedback on how we did, or to share with us topics you'd like to see in future webinars. So on behalf of Turnkey and Mobile Labs, I'd like to thank you again for your time and hope you all have a great day. Thanks.